Good evening, lovely audience. My name is Farah Hanis, a PhD student from University Putra, Malaysia, and welcome to my presentation titled The Prevalence and Risk Factors of Abnormal Behaviors Among Working Horses in Malaysia. So stable horses, like many other domesticated animals, are prone to develop behavioral problems such as stereotypic and redirected behavior. So a quick description. Stereotypic behavior is a repetitive functionless behavior patterns that commonly used as the indicator of poor welfare. And stress and frustration is a common umbrella term to explain this behavior. However, the developmental process of the behavior is far more complex, which it involves multiple behavioral motivations such as stabling, feeding practice, and improper nutrition. The management, horse care, and feeding practices in Malaysia are mostly adapted from Australia and UK, probably because we imported most of our horses from the two countries. So that there's not much of study about them here. So the present study is the first report on the stable management and feeding practices in Malaysia, as well as their effects on the abnormal behaviors. So this study was conducted in 7 established equestrian facilities, and a total of 207 healthy horses were used, and there were 4 types of horses were identified. They were used for leisure riding, equestrian sport, endurance, patrolling, and polo sport. So field research was conducted to collect data on the stable management and feeding practice. The horse behavior were observed to measure the occurrence and the prevalence of the abnormal behavior using the instantaneous scan sampling method at 10-minute interval for 12 hours over 3 days. So two main type of behavior were observed. One is the abnormal behaviors, and the others behavior are that commonly observed in the stable box. All data was analyzed using SAS. T-square test was used to explore the relationship between stable management and feeding practice on the abnormal behavior. Data was considered significant at p less than 0.05. So this is result on the working hour per week for each type of work. So as you can see, different type of works at different working hour per week. And this is the result for feeding practice. So majority of horses in this study were fed 3 times a day. And here is common concentrate to be mixed with chaff, and this mixture were fed to majority of horses twice a day. For hay, majority of the horses were fed only 1 time a day, and majority of horses were fed 2 to 3 kg of hay a day, in contrast to concentrate that was 4 to 6 kg. Majority of horses were fed 1 to 2 kg chaff a day. So for prevalent of abnormal behaviors, because one horses were observed to display more than one type of abnormal behavior. So the total number of cases for abnormal behavior here is more than 207. A total of 525 cases were recorded. So for oral stereotypies, some chewing had the highest prevalence. In locomotory stereotypies, waving and head tossing had the highest prevalence. In redirected behaviors, bedding eating had the highest prevalence. Overall, sham chewing had the highest prevalence in the studied population. Among horse group, endurance and patrol horses had the highest cases. And as you can see here, behavior that marked with asterisk was found to had a significant association with the type of work. So working hours were based on the type of work, and for example, like leisure riding had very low hours because they owned by mostly by private owners. Endurance and polo, they are constantly trained for competition or tournament, and for patrolling, they had longer hours because they're required to went out for patrolling on alternate day, and they also use for equestrian and endurance training. So, overall majority of horses in this study were fed with small amount of hay, but large amount of concentrate. And from personal communication, we found that some of the equine practitioners here thought that hay plus concentrate were the main feed for horses, and hay just a supplementary diet for the horses. And another possibility, because the imported hay is quite pricey here, and at this moment we don't have any suitable local grasses for horses. So it is well discussed in many previous study that feeding horses with uh, uh, more more concentrate than roughages can increase risk that associated with gastrointestinal dysfunction, lameness, and abnormal oral behaviors. So this is abnormal behaviors and their association to stable management and feeding practice. So the circle that overlapping means that they had significant association. For example, amount of hay had significant association with all three abnormal behaviors. Oral stereotypies had significant association with working hour and amount of concentrate, and for number of feeding had significant association with locomotory stereotypies as well as redirected behavior. So we found that working hour largely based on different type of work, and horses that had longer working hour, like more than 8 hours per week, exposed to higher risk to develop abnormal behavior. And for number of feeding, probably because the horses were fed with concentrate more frequent than hay, and then they cause the anticipatory for the next meal. And there's a one previous study suggested that the abnormal behavior can be improved if hay was fed more frequently than concentrate. Amount of hay, it is said that if the horses were fed with 6.8 kg forages, it could have a negative relationship with the risk of stereotypic behavior. And amount of concentrate are known to have a strong association with many diseases as well as the risk to develop abnormal behavior. So in conclusion, this study found that stable management and feeding practice are some of the risk factors of abnormal behavior in our study population. And we also found that the oral stereotypic behavior had the highest prevalence compared to redirected and locomotory stereotypic behavior. And this is some of the important references for this study. And thank you very much. If you have any question, please do so during the live Q&A. And you can also email me. And if you're interested to read more about this study, you can find the article that I listed here. Thank you.